providing practical, cutting-edge wisdom, embracing all parts of the human experience into a map of transformation, accelerating soul alignment for individual and collective ascension. We are your hosts, Jonathan Mozenter
and Rachel
on the Relationship Alchemists.
Welcome back. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing the importance of energy to life and transformation and all the ways that our energetic capacities can be enhanced and expanded. Before we get too deep into the content, though, we do want to set some context for the many perspective lenses that are feeding this show and talk a little bit about the way that we've organized the vast amount of information that all falls under transformation. And to start, there are really three lenses on reality. In some of our content, you may have heard this referred to as I, you, and other, but truly at the heart, it is first, second, and third person. And you may remember from school, but first person, when we write in that, we're using I, and it has to do with the self-work. It has to do with self-awareness and personal development. The second person category is the you language in writing. It's when we speak as if there is a specific person receiving our content. And so this is where a lot of the interactive and intimacy codes play out, both in the one-on-one and the community dynamics. And then we have third person, which is connected to the narrator voice in writing, but in our frame of reference has to do with the connection to metaphysical concepts, spiritual laws, and direct relationship with divine and the transpersonal. So in each of these perspective lenses, we've identified two paths, two development areas that really help land these perspective lenses. And today we're going to be covering the one that we think is the most foundational and is also something that every person needs, whereas some of these might appeal more to an individual than others, and that is personal alignment, the path of capacity. And there's a lot we could say about the path of capacity, but what we mean by capacity in general is to use a metaphor from computers, amount of RAM in your system. You know, we have lots of deep memory storage, but only so much can appear on our spectrum of attention at once. We only have so much RAM, only have so much capacity or attention. And so when we expand this, both through daily practices and some key perspectives that create more bandwidth in energetic, physical, mental, and emotional bandwidth, then we create a foundation of availability that gives us more to bring to all the other areas. So Jonathan, what do you want to tell us about the path of capacity?
Yeah, there are many different ways to improve your capacity, including self-awareness, meditation, improving your body, integrating things with daily habits, embodiment. And this path, as Rachel said, it's really for everyone. It's a starting place. Everyone can use more capacity. They could use more energy and more skill development, and it will just give you more ability to do whatever you're here to do. And there really are no prerequisites. This is just a place to kind of get started, whereas some of the other paths, actually capacity, you need a greater capacity to work in these other domains. So this is a great foundational place to start.
And another metaphor that I've heard you use before, Jonathan, is the idea of upgrading your phone from 3G to 4G to 5G. So it's really quantum leaps that we're talking about as available in this path of capacity. You bring a different you to the other paths when you've done your groundwork in this particular lineage of study.
Just to give a very short example, when I really started my own personal practice, transformation process, I really got committed. I changed my diet, I changed my exercise, and then I started meditating in that order. And they each kind of built on the energy, and the meditation radically changed my whole life.
Yeah, I would say similarly, meditation really created a whole new access to my relationship with myself. And there are many, many skills that we will cover in this section that have been life-changing already. So with that, we can cover lightly some of the other categories. The other first-person, self-oriented category we call remembering wholeness, the path of purification.
Yeah, in this path, you really do need more capacity to really do this. This is going deeper within yourself. It's deeper kinds of self-awareness, looking at parts work, looking at your core wound, aligning with your purpose. Also, it involves getting into more subtle energies. So it requires an open mind. These are things that are not really talked about in the mainstream, different kind of energy levels, chakras, and a lot of other subtle energies. It also looks at the very subtle thoughts that are going on in our own mind. Before I started meditating, I had no idea what I was really thinking. I found out there were many levels of the mind. So in this purification path, you start looking at your stories, limiting beliefs, and also about feelings that are really deep and suppressed within you.
And this comes back to the name of our show and the name of our business, Relationship Alchemists, because when we go back into these old stories or traumas, we have an opportunity to rewrite our relationship to that content. And in rewriting that relationship or that story and our relationship to that story, we take those wounds and transmute them into gifts and into superpowers. So this path of purification is incredibly high leverage, but prerequisites would be having enough spaciousness within your being to really meet that content without becoming overwhelmed and re-traumatized. So this is a more advanced version of self-work, but in future episodes, we will cover some of the abundant depth that is available here.
There's a crazy amount of energy available when you free up and you do this kind of work. It's very high leverage, but it requires a deep understanding of the unconscious, the mind, and emotions, and having a different relationship to negative things that we would previously label as negative.
So, second person's first path is called human connection, the path of intimacy. And this is where a lot of our interpersonal skills come in. Codes around verbal communication, like active listening, reflective listening, speaking accurately and concisely using conscious language. Also, different parts of speech, how communication really works.
Well, there's a lot of energy. We all deal with people and every day, and the more smoothly we interact with people and it goes, then we've got more energy. That those relationships, like you're actually boosting your own energy. You imagine when you have a successful one, you have more intimacy. There's an energy increase there, and if you work through problems quickly, then there's more energy there. It does help to have a path of capacity, because the better version you are of yourself, the more likely you're going to be with a better version of yourself with other people as well. So that's a prerequisite that helps.
Yeah, and some of the benefits of this lineage is when you're connecting with other people, especially in the one-on-one, you're really feeling fully conveyed, fully received, understood, heard, acknowledged. And so these are a lot of the codes that we've witnessed some communities have more of than others, and that really create a richness and connection that is a key part of the human experience. And Jonathan was talking a little bit about prerequisites. I would personally put forth that a certain degree of depth with the path of purification. Path of purification is a long journey, and certainly you don't have to have it perfected in any way, but a certain level of that is really helpful when cultivating in the path of intimacy, because if enough self-work hasn't happened before we relate to others, that's where patterns like projection and judgment really start to interfere with our interpersonal skills and our social emotional intelligence, because the unmet self-work is appearing as if it is interpersonal work. And it's important to feel the subtle difference in that and kind of peel that apart and be self-responsible to our own healing.
I think we should move into the community dynamics, the path of collaboration. Now, this is a path that really has to do with my previous career as an organizational development consultant, and it involves understanding the steps of change. There's actually been studying different processes that enable change to happen. It could be like assessing readiness for change, creating urgency, removing obstacles. There's a lot of steps. I'm not here to break that all down to you, just to give you a taste. It's also understanding there are different components to making people work together. Teams, how do you maximize teams? How do you get incentives right? Communications. And then there's a lot of different tools that somebody who's doing this work needs in addition to communication skills, which is why the capacity, ability, and the interpersonal skills are really good prerequisites for this one to do it well. So there's a lot of different other tools like understanding how to do alignments, training, large group facilitation. There's a lot of tools in here. The benefits of this are incredible. When you get large groups of people collaborating efficiently and effectively, it makes a lot of people happy. It brings up a lot of energy. I'm sure everyone can relate to working in organizations where things didn't go well and how that affected them at work, and then they were complaining about it at home and things didn't get done as well. Imagine if we had that all mastered, how much more energy would be freed up to do even more things, whether it's at work or whatever domain of life we want to channel that energy to. It's a really important set of tools, and ones that are not well understood.
And I would say this path in particular is for leaders.
Absolutely.
It's for people that want to bring these community codes back to their collective, to create a level of harmony that was not previously available within their system. So this is really where we share some big codes that we're excited to introduce the world to and bring a new spotlight upon.
Should we want to introduce the third person, Rachel?
Yes. So the first path that we come to in the third person perspective is related to aligning with higher energies. It's the path called clarity, path of the transpersonal. And this is a particularly important category for me because I have such a historical involvement with divination, and that is both oracle, tarot, palm reading, pendulums, all the ways that we can use physical objects to communicate with the divine. But it's also some of these meditation concepts like no self, no time, samadhi experiences, non-dual perceptions of reality, and even dream yoga, which we're excited to talk about in future episodes. But a lot of these things increase presence, like altered states, and allow for us to have more immediate connection with that within us that is larger than life, and the acknowledgement that we are a piece of the all. How do we also relate to that full all as a piece of it? And when people really have this is really the foundations of what we could call gnosis, this clarity is. And there are definitely radical benefits to accessing this level of intimacy with the divine.
This is what the core of what Rachel and I are trying to bring to the world, which is people have this ability to know without thinking that some part of them can be connected to everything and connect, radically present, and just in a moment know exactly what to do. We're talking about transcending doubt. I'm not talking about omnipotence. It's more about directing your soul what to do in the moment. And this is an advanced skill. There are some practices that are for beginners, and when we're working with people, we'll show them the easy stuff, and eventually the goal is to purify your being. So you can have it all the time. So to have it all the time, you need to move through the path of capacity as well as the path of purification.
A lot of times if someone hasn't, done the prerequisites and they tap into these ways of knowing, for example, when I was early in my development, had an experience where I felt like God was yelling at me, and it was actually my mind and my ego kind of like bringing to the surface all of my wounds at once, because I had access to high enough level of energy and high enough connection with the deeper part of me that is all oriented or all connected, that many things began surfacing at once that had yet to be purified, and it created a lot of chaos. So yeah, this is, for the right people, a really great area of study, and yeah, very excited to find students, participants that can join us at this level. And then the last path that we have in the third person is unity, the path of understanding.
This path has to do with looking at life more objectively, looking at a more meta perspective, like above metaphysics, and looking at patterns, spiritual laws, the process of life. Integral theory is, for example, an excellent model that brings together science and spirituality and politics and culture and science and human behavior. It also involves looking at different, more subtle dynamics of the world and exploring other ways of looking at reality that are not like mainstream, like going like beyond traditional politics and looking at things like divide and conquer and how power is used, for example, would be another area, as well as something called animism, which Soraya Rachel loves to talk about.
Yeah, animism is relating to all of life as alive, because it's an acknowledgement that with every kind of relationship, you are demonstrating the relationship that you wish to participate in to the world. And so this is where talking to your plants, which has been scientifically proven to help them grow and flourish, comes in. This is relating to the 5 elements in a very personal way, and also has to do with something that I particularly resonate with and hold dear, which is the kinds of synchronicity that come up in working with your spiritual objects and the kinds of themes and narratives that they can pull to your attention. And the other comparison I wanted to make between this clarity, path of the transpersonal, and unity, path of understanding, is clarity in the transpersonal is almost more of this artistic flavor. It has a lot of aliveness in your direct experience, whereas this unity path has a little more of structural or scientific, or this is the way the mechanics of reality work. And so
Pattern recognition, really.
Yeah, pattern recognition. And so together they really create balanced foundation of relating to this bigger perspective on what the human experience is and what reality is offering us.
Let's move into the next part of the show, which is we're going to talk about energy and transformation at a high level. So first off, everything is energy and information at the core. And if you think about it just in your direct experience, our energy level determines our experience, like what thoughts, what feelings, what sensations we're having. Just think about like after you exercise or after you eat a really healthy meal, how does that affect the rest of your day or what immediately happens afterwards? So once we understand that if we have our energy level first and we make that primary, we can really change our whole experience by understanding all the different ways that we can change our energy levels and increase them. And when also to know all energy levels serve. So if we have a way of contextualizing what energy level we're at, we might know better what to do at that time. So I'm going to use a model, a very simple model of energy levels. And so Rachel's going to talk about some examples. So this comes from Donnie Epstein, but he starts off with energy poor. Energy poor is like we have very low energy. It could be right before you go to sleep. It could be like you're having a trauma experience where everything's extremely negative and painful. Then there's like energy neutral. And neutral could have like a low neutral flavor. And in neutral, you're just kind of going with the status quo. You're not really trying to make change. It's a good one to get daily exercises done, like just like taking out the garbage, but not. You need at least high neutral to really do more complex thinking and more different kinds of perspective taking. And then from high neutral, at times when you want to start influencing people, you can get into energy rich. And that's where you can have more of an impact on someone. So if you're doing a presentation, you're going to want to be at least energy rich. And then to get into some of these like transpersonal areas like we were talking about before, like clarity, the path of the transpersonal, you're going to want to have super energy rich. And when you're getting into these states, you're going to have more of like a flow state. And you're just going to know what to say and what to do kind of automatically. And life's just a lot more effortless at these stages. And we want to know how to get our energy up to these states when we need it. And so that's a lot of what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and this is also a context that we're setting now because the path of capacity, all of these skills raise energy in their own way. Some of them are more boosts and some of them are regular maintenance that increases capacity over time. But as we first become aware of these energy levels and what they're doing for us, we then begin to implement techniques that can shift our energy levels in an individual moment to meet our needs. Because people might think, oh, well, I just want to build up my capacity until I'm energy rich all the time. It's like, actually, no. It's good to spend that super rich energy when you need it, but you don't need to be at the grocery store super energy rich, or you might be talking to things that aren't there or something, you know?
Yeah, Donnie Epstein calls it epienergetic, so it's the ecological use of your energy. So one of the things when you recognize these different energy states, you can match it with the task at hand that you want to do.
Yeah, so an example of a couple comparative days in the life, because this is essentially the before and after of my own transformation story, is day A. I wake up energy poor, and when I'm energy poor, I'm in these thought loops that grab my attention and kind of drain me, and I might realize I don't need to give those things my attention, and so I pull myself into social media, and that just, it isn't really about me there, so I like just dip into low neutral in that moment. And low neutral is just high enough for me to make breakfast and do my morning hygiene, and so then I'm like high neutral, and then I'm hanging out in high neutral a little bit, but I need to be creative to do my work, and it's not quite enough energy to do that, so I clean the house instead. You know, I want to do something productive. And then after cleaning the house for a while, I'm finally feeling energy rich. And it's like 6 p.m. at night, and I finally start doing my actual work. So that's version A, where I'm just kind of following the energy and not consciously relating to matching the energy I want to the situation. So, new formula is I wake up and I'm energy poor, and I immediately roll out of bed and do some breath work and some meditation and some chi. And so then between that and my morning ritual, I'm already at energy rich, and I can start working at like 10 or 11 in the morning and have all day to just occasionally take breaks and nurture the energy and keep myself fed to an energy rich state that allows me to stay in the flow of creating.
I wanted to introduce another core concept that Donnie Epstein talks a lot about, which is called coherent energy. And he would say your coherent energy establishes what is going to happen. Now, coherent energy has two components to it. There's an increase, like an energy, so just like the volume of energy, but then also the direction of the energy. And what I mean by direction is like where are you channeling it? It's like you could just have like a spazzy kind of energy, or are you putting it in an intelligent and coherent way that aligns with the processes of life, that aligns your energy with the task. So there's a lot of alignment work and mastering of skills and development and using that energy in a way that aligns with the codes of life. And this show is going to show you both how to increase your energy, but then how to intelligently apply it to life so you have even more energy and more effectiveness, and so your manifestations of your dreams align with what's in your heart. And the last distinction I want to make around energy, I believe I mentioned on the first show, is this thing called bound and unbound energy. And this is a very important and very simple distinction. So bound energy is any energy that already has a form, which form could mean anything that you could describe: a thought, a feeling, a sensation, a solid object, a person. And unbound is pure energy that doesn't have a form. So we're always trying to mold this bound reality. But when we're bringing like old ideas like bound energy, like an old thought or concept, we're bringing bound to bound, which is okay. But if you want to reach the super higher energies, you want to bring this pure unbound energy, which is why part of the reason you help to understand in meditation why you're trying to achieve this stillness, or these what some people call emptiness practices, because then you're not bringing your past reference points. You're allowing space of pure energy to come through to see if maybe something better, a new insight is possible by using this unbound energy. So the show is going to teach you about how to bring more unbound to bound, as opposed to always bring bound to bound. Rich, do you?
Yeah, I have a quick metaphor.
go ahead.
A quick metaphor that really helps elucidate bound versus unbound is you're picturing the place you want to live in the future. And there's two ways of visualizing it. The bound way is my parents raised me in a 4-bedroom house that looks approximately like this. And so when I visualize the future where I have the dream home, it has that same kind of structure. Me, my partner, this kind of building. When we bring unbound energy to that, we think about the qualities and emotions of how we feel in home, and then allow the universe to meet those emotions as fully as possible. And because we didn't assign a specific expression to it, we get to be met in a new way. And perhaps I have 3-month timeshares in 4 locations, and I have this desire to travel met that wouldn't have been accessed in the same way if I had purchased a singular house one place. So this is just one way of speaking more about this concept, and we will go deeper in future episodes. But we wanted to talk a little more about what was mentioned earlier, which is epigenetics, because one of our primary systems, gene keys, talks a lot about entropy. And gene keys, for those who aren't as familiar, it says that basically DNA gives a flavoring to what our experience of reality is like, but that it is not destiny. In fact, our attitudes and the environments that we grew up in give us a experience of the potential of our disposition or genetic sequence that could either be at the shadow, gift, or Siddhic frequency. And so it really, for me, has allowed me to see how the things that are troubling me have more and more beautiful expressions, and that which of the levels I'm expressing from has more to do with context than fate, locking me into something. And so there's an incredible amount of freedom here. But there's particularly a gene key, it's the very first one, called entropy, that has a lot to say about the importance of building capacity.
Yeah, gene keys, which Rachel has to do with the primordial understanding of reality. The very first gene key in the shadow is entropy. And the definition of entropy is like the measure of disorder or unavailability of energy lies with a closed system. More entropy means less energy for doing work. And it goes on to say that this mastering this first shadow is the key to mastering all the gene keys. And the book says the secret to harnessing creativity actually lies in this first shadow. In fact, the secret to every gene key in this book, all 64, lies in harnessing and accepting the energy latent within each of these 64 shadows. So in order for us to move from shadow to gift to city, we really need to master our energy. And that's why we're making this whole episode about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So when there is disorder or unavailability of energy within a system, this can manifest as the repressive nature, which is depressive and depression, or the reactive nature, which is frantic, and we're distracting ourselves from the depression by over socializing or not respecting the fact that our body is calling us into a moment of stillness. And really, the way that we move entropy into the gift of freshness has to do with, not fighting those moments where we are called inward and to meet our discomfort. And that acknowledgement that numbness in particular is a fertile ground for the biochemistry that creates creativity to begin its work. And so instead of the depression being something that we judge or we try to figure out or fight, instead trying to give it as little mental attention as possible, and instead just respect the stage that we're in and trust that it is creating the chemical foundation of originality to enter the world through us.
Nice. So let's just get into energy and start off talking about the first person, the alignment, personal alignment, the path of capacity. And we're going to talk just about the energetic component of it. And we're going to start off with some concepts I learned from Donnie Epstein, who is an energy master of the highest level. He's invented a lot of different energy techniques that have stood the test of time, that have been helping people for over 30 years. And so I'm going to talk about some of the concepts, and we're going to talk about them at a high level. We're not going to go into crazy depth. We could actually probably do a whole show on each of these different concepts. But Donnie says that has discovered, not to say, he's literally discovered by working with thousands of people that each person has their own energetic patterns, and he's able to just make into some simple distinctions that when people understand which pattern is the right one for them, it can radically change their energy. The first one he calls epi way, and he's broken this into simply it's distinction of two things. He says either people are what he would call an external or an internal. Now, these are new definitions, so drop your what you typically think of as internal and external. And in Dottie's definition, an external would mean somebody who actually is motivated by the future that they're here to bring. And they are most energized when they view their whole life retrocausally, meaning that they were sent here to bring a certain future, and all of their past life, all of their past was meant to help them build so that they were ready to bring this future. So they are very motivated when they're looking to the future, when they're outside of themselves, when they're being of service. Internals are the opposite. They are very motivated when they think about all the successes they had in the past and how can they incrementally take that success and take those patterns and bring them to the future, like to their next. So we see advancement by lessons learned from the past. So internals are de-energized when they get too focused into the future. They start to get anxious and their energy drops, and the externals get very depressed and very energy drops when they start thinking about their past, or they start thinking about their failures and not manifesting the vision that they're meant to do. And I discovered, I originally thought I was internal. Almost everybody starts off opposite their epi way because of defense mechanisms. That's a whole other story we're not going to get into today. But when I discovered I was external, it radically changed my life. And I started looking into the future I was here to create and focusing my energy. And I just became a different, higher version of myself when I got this. It takes some practice to really nail it down on a moment-to-moment basis, but it's a very powerful one. Soraya, Rachel, how has this one helped you?
Yeah, I would say in general, I've always been someone who got a lot of spaciousness or expansiveness out of this perspective called the retrocausal timeline. If I look back on my past, I don't really have this internal way of, oh, these are all the ways things went well that create a momentum, and now I'm going to be this thing. A lot of my past, I chalk up to the initiations I needed to get to where I am now and where I plan to be in the future. And so there's this way that my soul outside of time was like, this is the destination. Whatever needs to be backfilled in order for me to reach that, I will persist through it. I will stay. And so the external perspective really grounded that for me. And I think part of what is also really powerful is the spatial orientation of these. The external receives energy from outside of itself. So this is where we get the metaphor of the receiving healing light from outside of us, and it enters us and it creates a certain effect. Whereas an internal, their energy is within them and shines out of them. And so this really came into play for me, just to get into one specific example around flow arts. It's just a dancing with props thing that I do. And it's really, embodied dance is about the internal sensations of the body and what is available safely. But prop dance is completely outside of yourself. And so I was exploring the space around me and how things within it come in towards me and fly around me, which is very much an external orientation towards dance. So, just one example of what that can look like.
Another brilliant invention of Donny Epstein is the epi grid. Rachel and I call ourselves a relationship alchemist because we have discovered that our relationship to different aspects determines an energy level. And Donnie has come up with this very clever and creative way of discovering what's in our subconscious by helping people recognize that they have an energy grid around them and in them. And there's a method where it allows people to discover to what our relationship to different concepts, like different roles, like the role of mother or dad or divine masculine, or just different emotions or topics, and whether they're energized or not energized. And it's a very fast tool, and he's also has a lot of different techniques to change our relationship from to see if they're aligned with our epi way or if they're going against it. And then once you change your energetic grid, is like relationship at a deep energetic level, what happens is you've kind of supercharged your field to give you the exact experiences to kind of deepen that relationship and have different energies towards different parts of life. He helped me see, for example, in my energetic grid, that I had intimacy in a place in my energy grid tucked in with really nasty things like torture and death. And he's like, no wonder you're struggling with you having long-term relationships. Your unconscious is programmed or wired to avoid it. And we did some techniques, and boom, Soraya and Rachel and I met her like literally a month later, and we've been started a long-term relationship after getting to know each other. And so this stuff is incredibly powerful. It's very fast, and very grateful for Donnie for inventing these energy tools. And we now have regular practices where we put certain energies into our field, and it really affects the manifestation. Sorry, do you have anything to say about epi grids?
Only that it's a powerful tool.
Yeah.
And some of the things that come to mind as really powerful to shift that you hadn't mentioned is like, where is death in your field? That's huge. Where is change in your field? What are your relationships to some of these concepts? And if you really feel and sense energy and you can place them around you or within you, it becomes a game-changing technique.
Absolutely. And Donnie has also talked about another distinction about these primordial intelligences. He defines 6 of them, and these are also ones good to know about where in your field. There's the survivor, which is the part of us that's trying to keep us alive. And then there's the reactor, which is the part of us that's managing our emotions. And then there's the lower mental, which is helping us with judgment, good or bad, right or wrong. And then there's the upper mental, which is the part of us that looks at different kinds of possibilities and allows our imagination to get in, and how do we optimize the situation. Then there's these transpersonal intelligences, like the soul intelligence, which gives us the light and truth, which is this path of clarity that we're talking about that most people don't really talk about it. And then there's the weaver, which is the universal spirit that's like this meta intelligence that's looking over everything, that's creating synchronicities in life. And he's named them, and you can kind of see that where they are in your energetic grid. And once you kind of know how that they are, and you can know how to access them and use them more consciously. Before I did meditation, I didn't even know anything about these transpersonal intelligences, so I was never using them. And I was using them more unconsciously through the meditation techniques. But once I started using Donnie's techniques, I learned to more consciously use these different intelligences, and I could see my relationship to them and get them into an optimized place. And this is the kind of mentoring that I offer, is helping people maximize their energetic grid so it's aligned with their heart's desire, and it makes manifestation easier. Another core distinction that I want to go through briefly is that Donnie has mapped out these different stages of transformation, and he puts them, and he's got 12 of them, and he puts them into 4 seasons. I don't have time to get into all 12 of them, but there are these 4 main seasons. There's the season of discover, which is where you're discovering kind of what's going on within you, what's in your subconscious. It's going deep. It has a lot to do with the path of purification. And then there's the path of transformation, which is all the steps we do to manifest, to evolve ourselves and evolve the reality around us. And then there's the path of awaken, which is this kind of a meditative, enlightened state where we're just in our being and everything is kind of perfect. And then there's the last stage is called the integrate, where you're able to bring the different stages together, where you could bring awaken into discover, or awaken into transform, or how do you toggle transform into discover and bring them together. And once you understand these different stages and how to work with them, then this also is you're working with the primordial seasons of reality, and it's a game changer. And Donnie even has special exercises for each of the 12 stages called somatic respiratory integration, and they really give you a state change and put you into these different energies. So it enables, if you know how to use them intelligently, they can help you with your path of transformation. And the last thing we wanted to talk about that related to Donnie Epstein is network spinal, which is his primary tool it's a chiropractic tool. And instead of kind of physically adjusting people, he works with these different energies. He works with the intelligences, he works with the seasons, and he sees where they're represented in these spinal gateways. And through these light touches, he's able to upgrade your energetic system so it works more efficiently, effectively. I've personally not only used it for that, I've seen it change my mind, my emotions, my physical posture. It helps me integrate new concepts. Soraya, Rachel, do you have anything to say about network spinal?
Yeah, the way that they tap it is almost about resetting the nervous system gates. And instead of popping your spine back into its original position, it prods the system to reset and slowly move it back towards its original alignment. So it creates a container through which, the various dimensions of your being can make the adjustments necessary to allow the spine to return. And so it's a very beautiful system. And some other energetic capacity builders are things like atmospheric coherence, where you create an environment that actually gives you more available energy because it nurtures your energy. It meets you within your needs. It reflects back to you your own energy. And one that's very dear to my heart is anointing. I know when I have done my anointing practice and I activate it in my hands, there's an aliveness to my energetic system that can be felt. And wherever I anoint myself with the oils, receives an energetic boost and actually gets an opportunity to meet higher capacities of energy. And speaking of energy, there's also a lot to be said for chi energy. Chi energy heals. Jonathan, you want to tell them about that before we conclude?
Yeah, chi energy cultivation is something that came to me through kind of spirit. I was on an exercise path, and I got some guidance to try this very esoteric, but it's like Qigong or Tai Chi, and I was doing an esoteric version of Qigong, and it's working with the nervous system and increasing the bandwidth of the nervous system, so it's got more and more energy, and it allows you to amplify whatever you're feeling. And you do this practice by putting positive qualities into your body, so whatever you're kind of thinking and feeling at the time. So there's an emphasis on being, cool and confident, relaxed, enthusiastic, and you bring it into energy, and it really makes an enormous difference. This guy discovered that the nervous system is an electrical system and it works like electricity. And he's got all these practices that help you kind of amplify. And so it's a very powerful practice. And I just want to make also a game changer, the atmospheric coherence. I was very unfocused, and once I learned to manage my environment and getting it all cleaned up and focused, I could really dig in. My energy just went up. Everything's like in a coherent place, and I was able to like get a lot more deeper work done. My creativity flowed, and it's a super powerful practice. We certainly use it with our clients in retreats as well. So
it's one of those techniques that is a daily practice. Some of these you can do, for example, network spinal once, maybe twice a week. She is one of those ones that really benefits from a daily commitment to showing up to your practice. It really builds over time. Same thing with anointing. It takes 20 minutes for oils to fully sink into your bloodstream, and it lasts in your system for 6 weeks. So there's really a compound effect from a daily practice that is really beneficial. So this goes into this idea of how do we create healthy habits?
Yeah, healthy habits enable integration. It's one thing to hear an idea on a show like this, but it's quite another to take that idea and transfer it into the mental frame, into the being space. And in order to do that, we need to have one, as Rachel's mentioning this term, a healthy habit, a daily practice. These, like, for example, I upgrade my energy grid every day. And in every moment, I'm trying to observe whether I'm in my energetic way or not and make adjustments. And it took a while to get these habits down and to learn which of the intelligence are used when. You got to practice these things. So it's really helpful to have an accountability systems. I use some like tracking systems when I would do my chi cultivation. I would write down every day like how long I would do it and whether I did it, and I would check in with my chi master and help us communicate about exactly what's going on in specifics. Coaches are extremely helpful, mentoring, so that you can work with somebody who's actually integrated this deep into their being before. I have used several different kinds of coaches in the past. I had a chi coach, a meditation coach, an energetic coach. Sometimes, the coaching could be like somewhat regular, like once a month, every few weeks, could be every few months. Also, sometimes deeper integrations require retreats. With meditation, I would go off with my meditation master for like 8-day retreats and to really deepen a new habit. And this is Soraya, Rachel, and I offer both retreats and coaching for individuals and couples, and soon we'll be doing retreats with bigger groups as well. And these will not only teach you the practices like we've mentioned today, but also other practices we'll talk about on future shows. And the goal is to get it into your being, to really energize your transformation. Our Soraya, Rachel, and I's hearts just open when we see our clients flourishing, when they're living their heart's dreams and guiding them through each baby step.
There's really a huge level jump. I know at the beginning of last year, I was pulling myself out of energy poor mornings every day. And after doing a certain amount of work, I was waking up in neutral and just had so much more available energy to build momentum and create life from. And just in this year, 2022, I've actually developed a solid routine around doing energy and meditation every day. And the benefits of this cannot be understated. It is a different quality of experiencing reality. It's a completely different frequency. And I know for some of our listeners, that may be yet a vague concept, but when we talked earlier about the gene keys and we mentioned the shadow, gift, and Siddhic levels, there is a certain quality to the shadow frequency, which is almost like feeding the entropy. Like it wants things to unravel into chaos, and you're always kind of like resisting the unraveling. Whereas when you're at the gift level, there's a different relationship to life. It is more this feeling of what wants to be born to the world through me today, what wants to come through to reality as the result of my creative energy, and what is the highest expression of how I can meet reality today. And these are huge shifts in frequency that we hope to help as many people as possible access.
I wanted to, before we get to the closing, just leave you with a tip. This is a game-changing tip that can really change your life. This very simple, I'm going to give you something called decree that relates to the content of the show. Once you realize that your experience and accept, acknowledge, accept that your experience is about your energy level, you stop identifying with your negative thoughts and feelings and realize it just has to do with your energy level.
Yes.
So just saying every day, waking up every morning, is that my thoughts, feelings, sensations, and experience are directly related to my energy level.
Yes.
And drill that into your being, into the core of your being, into your know it, your soul. When you put your energy first, your rest of your life just flows. It goes effortlessly and easy. And it's so important to disidentify, because a lot of people think these negative thoughts and feelings and sensations and experience they're having are them, and they're just their energy level. And that all by itself will change your life. So why don't we just next week's show, we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to go even deeper into this.
Yeah, this is just some energetic levels of increasing our capacity, but we still have so many tools related to mental, emotional, and physical capacity. So we hope to talk to you again soon and share the many more opportunities of perspectives and practices that can create a whole new relationship to reality for you.
Yeah, if you have any questions or comments or are interested in working with us, you can reach me at Jonathan, JONATHAN, at relationshipalchemists.com.
And I can be reached at Rachel, RACHAEL, at relationshipalchemists.com. We would love to hear from you. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Good night.
As we all take accountability for our energy coherence, we create the world where more is possible. More beauty, more magic, more joy. So let's all step into conscious creatorship together. Sending you omnipresent love.